Okay, we're live. I'm just going to wait till it comes through on the YouTube page and then we will get started. Oh, here. Awesome. Let me go ahead and mute there. Okay. While we are getting rolling here, you can go ahead and type any wins you've had in the chat using the hashtag win. So this is anything good that happened, any positive things, any mindset changes, anything you noticed as a result of reading GTD. I put my win in there, which is that I'm using my calendar much more in line with, whoops, sorry. I don't know what that is. Ah, what? I don't know why that's going. At least it was a GTD comment. um, let me go ahead and check here, make sure that we are still coming through okay on YouTube. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Okay, looks like we're coming through. I just want to wait until I hear myself again. There we go. All right. So yeah, my win for the week is that I am using my calendar much more in line with GTD principles. And it's been really nice because I think I was using my calendar to sort of stash things and not really fully think about them. So if you have any wins or anything you want to share, and even small things are welcome. I think like highlighting your small wins really helps to cement in your mind that you're moving forward, and small wins lift everyone up. So if you don't know me, my name is Michele Christensen. We're here on my channel, One Noteworthy Life, and this is stream number 5 of Getting Things Done. We're going to be going through the book section by section and focusing on implementing what we read. We'll be taking your questions and comments throughout this live video in the YouTube chat box, and you're always welcome to comment later in the comments down below this video. Super chats will be available throughout the live video at the bottom of the chat box, and that's a way to financially support the channel and the work I do in any amount you choose and get your comment highlighted. So I'm going to go ahead and check the chat. Okay, awesome. And now we're going to share my screen. Let's do that. I think that's better. So we are working with the 2015 version of the book, which is available on Amazon. And I do have an Amazon affiliate link for that in the description if you haven't bought a copy yet. And if you use that, I do make a small commission from Amazon and it doesn't cost you anything. So that would be awesome if you did that. I do want to encourage you to weigh in with your thoughts, comments, etc., either in the chat box or the comments, because one of the reasons that I wanted to do this live is to make it more collaborative. I feel like everyone benefits when we pool our knowledge and our comments, and I'm really passionate about this idea of sharing knowledge so that everybody can benefit. So today we're only covering the reflect section of chapter 2. I'm trying to keep the streams shorter, and also this concept is really big for me because I never did a weekly review until recently, in spite of having read GTD for the first time like maybe 10 years ago. Reflect is the 4th of the 5 phases of GTD. So getting into the introduction of this section, there was a few points I thought were interesting. One was that on a regular basis, we need to both be kind of working at the low level, like doing our work, making the widgets, whatever. And we also need to be able to step back and review everything that you're doing as well. So I thought that was an interesting observation, that those two things both need to happen kind of on a regular basis. The second is there's a recurring theme that's beginning to come up now, which is the idea that thinking about your work is important, not just doing the work. And I am working on internalizing this. It seems like we should just be able to do the work, but I think thinking about it and prioritizing it and reflecting on the projects you have and things like that gives relief from like the stress and the nagging worry that there's something being missed. And if you remember back in somewhere in chapter 1, there was an exercise. And if you haven't seen this, you'll find it in the reading of chapter 1, where it was purely a thought exercise. Sorry, I'm going to quiet this. It was purely a thought exercise where we went through thinking about something that was on our mind, something that was bothering us, and then picking out one action we could do to move that thing forward. And the idea was, okay, do you feel a little bit better? Well, yes, in most cases, most people did. And the point of that is that nothing changed in the physical world. All that changed is you gave it some thought. So that's really interesting. And we're now seeing it as a recurring theme, that you do need to spend some time in thought. The third thing I thought was interesting is it's our first introduction really to the weekly review, which is a Horizon 1 level of focus. And Horizon 1 in GTD is current projects and next action. GTD has 6 different levels or horizons of focus, and these are defined in the next section of Chapter 2, which is the last section of Chapter 2 and the last phase of the GTD workflow, which is engage. Now, you've probably seen other models of this idea of levels of focus. You have day-to-day, or the lowest level, and then in between levels, and then at some place at the top, you have kind of your broad vision and purpose. In GTD, the lowest level is the ground level, which is next actions, and then Horizon 1 is the next level, and that's current projects, which are projects where you want something to be different from the current state that it's in, and your time frame is within a year. And in GTD, the definition of a project is something that has more than one next action. So the final thought on this intro section is that the idea of doing a weekly review increases your ability to make good choices about what to do and not to do at any point in time. And he uses the phrase it increases the efficacy of your choices. So I thought that was a really nice way to put that. So I'm going to go ahead and check chat, and then we will come back to the next section, which is what to review and when. Okay. The chat's pretty quiet tonight, but that's totally cool. So one of the first things in this section of what to review and when is that if you have set up your system as described in the workflow, maintenance should be easy. And I said I'm skeptical, but optimistic. And just to refresh what that means, this is the workflow slide. We covered this in maybe one of the earlier streams. I'm not sure which one, but it was where it happens in the book. And this is the GTD Workflow Diagram, and this is when you process incoming items. Every single item that comes in lands in one of these parameter spots, which are marked with an orange mark. The no items, which is no action, we can kind of put those aside because there's no action required. Those are in the upper right, those 3 items. Anything with an action required lands in one of these other perimeter spots. And so what he's saying is that if you have set your system up in accordance with this, that it should be easy to maintain. And I was kind of like blown away by this because it's been a while since I last cleaned up my GTD system. That's something I've been working on now. I have a lot of creep, meaning that there are things all over the place and not necessarily lined up with GTD. And it takes me a lot of time every day to get my hands around what I need to know and do and get to the point of being sure that there's nothing out there waiting to surprise me. So, David Allen says that the most frequent thing you will probably review is your calendar. And if you follow GTD principles, I mentioned this earlier with the calendar, anything on your calendar for today is for today only. Um, so it's your set appointments, anything that has to be done at some point today, like calling someone on their birthday, for example, or information that pertains to today, like directions to an appointment. So looking at your calendar at least once per day, if not more, will keep you aware of how much unscheduled time you have today. And he recommends checking your calendar throughout the day to make sure you know of all of the items for today. At a minimum, I check mine twice a day. I check at night to make sure my alarm is set for the correct time. And I also prepare, like if there's something unusual in the morning that I need to be out the door for, I might pack my bag the night before and that kind of thing. That those two checks are a minimum. I do revisit it throughout the day as needed, but I don't usually have too much on my calendar for the day. Pardon me. I do have someone on dog detail. I'm going to mute until that. Hey, we're live. What can I tell you? Oh, hi, Sarah. All right. So we are talking about. We were talking about the calendar. Oh, um, now I do have I just wanted to add this like a little personal tip. It's not really GTD related, but when I have a busy day with multiple appointments or destinations, sometimes I lay out like a really detailed schedule for the day that includes things like time to get ready, time to get to and from my appointment, when I'm going to eat my meals, when I'm going to walk the dogs, and things like that. It usually only takes a few minutes, and I feel a lot more on top of my busy day. So the next thing he mentions is after your calendar, the next most frequent thing you will probably check is your next action lists. And if you store them by context, you may be able to pull out a list that's suitable for the context you're in. So, for example, if you're in front of your computer, it's late in the day and you have 2 hours before your next commitment, you should theoretically be able to go right to your next action lists and pull out things that are suitable for that context. And if I remember correctly, the original version of GTD had more of a focus on keeping your next action lists by their physical contexts, like the physical setting in which you do a thing. But I think context can be defined in other ways. For example, I can be at home, which is a context. But for me, I do a lot of repair and stuff around the house, and I have a work clothes context, which is usually when I'm in my, kind of painting clothes or clothes that can get dirty or ruined. And I usually have safety gear on too. Once I'm in this context, it does help to have multiple things that I can do to maximize the effort of getting suited up. In the last section of this introduction, he says that projects, waiting for, and then someday maybe, that you want to review as often as you need to keep them from drawing your attention. And my interpretation of this, we'll get into it in the next section a little bit, is that this may or may not be weekly. So let's go ahead and check the chat. And we will get into the weekly review. So right in the subheading of this section, he calls the weekly review a critical success factor. And then he makes the case for why the weekly review is important. So first, it keeps your mind from trying to remember things. And we've covered that quite a bit, that one of the principles of GTD is to get things out of your mind and into a trusted system that you know you can rely on to cue you of things or remind you of things at the right time. The second is it allows you to reorient and reassess after a week of taking action. So if you're, working and busy and doing things all week, that once a week you can take and kind of reorient and, get clear again. Number three is it allows your brain to get just completely clear and empty and make sure nothing is left loose or undefined. And then the fourth is that it allows you to just work steadily, make progress all week, and then only do that one pause to review and tidy everything up. Around location, 1177. And these are Kindle locations. If you're using a Kindle device, when you see these numbers highlighted in orange, those are Kindle locations. Around location 1177, David Allen says that all projects, active project plans, next actions, agendas, waiting for, and someday maybe list should be reviewed once per week. In the what to review when section, he said to look at these items as often as you need to in order to keep them out of your head. So we kind of have two different perspectives. In this case, he's saying some of those items should be reviewed weekly. In the previous, it was however often you need to review things. And so what I'm taking from this is that it's however often you need to review things. And for example, I review my projects and next actions every week, but I do not review my someday maybe list every week. There's hundreds of items on there. Most of them are things that are just not relevant to me now, this week, or next week. So I don't review those every week, maybe every few months. So again, however often you need to keep those things off your mind. And this particular section about the weekly review is really kind of hits home for me because for some reason, I never did a weekly review until recently, maybe in the last 4 to 6 months. And as I mentioned, I first read GTD more than 10 years ago. And when I first read GTD, I couldn't see the value of reviewing all of my projects and lists every week, especially for the projects. Like most people, my plate is really full. And my reasoning at the time was that, well, when I finish something, I can add something new. That would be a good time to review and make a sound decision on what the next thing to take on would be. However, recently, through consuming GTD content, I became aware of the concept of overcommitment and how easy it is to have too much that you've committed to. Without a weekly review to see what you have going on, it's hard to make good decisions about whether or to say yes or no to something new. And I want to just add like a little comment that a commitment can be internal or external. So it could be something you have promised to someone else that you're going to do for them, or it can be internal, like something that you want to do, like, oh, I want to clean my closet. So once I started doing a weekly review, I realized two things. First was that a lot of the projects that I had in progress were just stalled because I had too many things going on. There was just not enough time to take action on all of them in a given week. And this was really eye-opening, and it helped me to see how much time I waste jumping from thing to thing when I would be better off doing fewer things at once and then completing them before adding something new. And second, it took probably 2 full months to get a handle on all of the projects I had in progress. It's not that I continued to start new things. It was that I was so in the dark about what I had already started or committed to and not finished that I would just notice something out of the blue and realize that that belonged on the current project list. And I hadn't even realized that thing was started or completed. So it took me, a while to even get a good, complete project list. And right now I have several current projects that I haven't made progress on in a while just because I haven't been able to. And I don't like that, but I do feel comfortable that I've made good choices about which things I allow to sit dormant while I finish more pressing things. Most important, I have been way more disciplined about saying a hard no to adding anything new when I have things that are started and not finished and even stalled. So I'm going to check the chat before we get into what happens in a weekly review. Okay. Okay, what happens in a weekly review? We're around location 1177 here. So the first point was gather and process. And he does make the point that this could happen at other time frames. I tend to, like all the little minutia that comes in throughout the day, I usually process that the next morning. So I don't do a whole lot of processing during the weekly review. Number 2 is to review your system. And he does say that this should be simple and take a short time to do. And if it takes too long, your system may be overly complex. And I have a note on screen here that says, see the Next Actions Associates video. In the description of this video, I have a link to a video from a channel called Next Action Associates on having your system be too complicated to review. And this was a really helpful video for me because it talked about how not to overbuild your system. And there's a big chunk of that video dedicated to the idea that the primary parameter when building out your GTD system is that it has to be reviewable. So I found that video really helpful, and they have some other good ones as well. So do check that out if you want more motivation and to make sure your system is reviewable and that you are reviewing it. That particular thing was just really, really helpful to me. That, like, as I'm thinking about where I'm going to store things and how I'm going to store them, what tools I'm going to use, the number one parameter is that it has to be reviewable. And my reviews are pretty short and quick, I will say that. So the third point is update your lists. So those would be like any next action lists or any other types of lists. And then he says get clear, clean, current, and complete. Right after this, he makes the argument that if your system isn't complete, doing a review won't feel satisfying. It won't help you to free up your brain, and it won't get things off your mind. So the more complete your system is, the more you're going to trust it and get that relief when you review it. And then you're more motivated to keep it complete. So we have this kind of self-reinforcing cycle. The more complete, more trust and relief, more motivation to keep it complete. Toward the end of this section, he talks about the week before vacation. And I completely get this. A lot of times, before you go on vacation, you make sure everything's handled. Anything that needs to be, anything that you owe someone, any bills that you need to pay while you're gone, just all the little odds and ends that you need to take care of. And everything feels just settled and good the week before you go on vacation. And it's such a great week to work. So if you understand this and you kind of get this and you're saying, yes, oh, I totally know that exact feeling, then he makes asks the question, like, well, why not feel this every week? And that really was a big motivator for me to start doing a weekly review. It's like, yeah, you can have that feeling of being really settled, caught up, current, aware of what's going on, etc. Every week, not just before you go on vacation. So believe it or not, we are heading into our wrap up already. As I mentioned, I do want to try and keep these streams shorter. The last few have been, I think, just too long. So I wanted to keep them shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and check chat. If you have anything you want to add, go ahead and put that in now. And we're good there. So the next stream is going to cover the final section of chapter 2. I've been thinking about the date. I think it's going to be right after the new year. I don't think I'm going to try and get that in. It's just too busy this time of year for most people, and people are traveling and stuff. So I think it'll be right after the new year. But we'll be covering the very last section of chapter 2. So in the meantime, you can continue reading and implementing GTD and note how things are changing for you so that you have some wins to add to the conversation next time we come back. So I'm going to do one more check at the chat, and then I'm going to say goodbye. Okay, everything looks good over there. Looks like my face might be a little bit blurry on YouTube. So if it's blurry, I do apologize. It looks fine on my end. I don't know what the problem is, but we're fine. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. It has been really fun to go through this material with a group. I've been really enjoying your comments and suggestions and your eye-opening things that you've noticed and things like that. So be sure to like the video and subscribe on your way out if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.